My brothers and sisters, what is going on, everybody? This is Steel Sermon. In the house, it is Tuesday afternoon with another video for you guys. As always, do me a favor, like, comment, subscribe, follow me on Instagram and on Twitter. Links are posted in the box down below. These are my Week 17 picks of the 2022 NFL season. Week 17 already. Normally, this would be the last week of the season, but because there are 18 weeks of the season now, it's the second last week. I'm still trying to get used to that. But, yeah, these are my Week 17 picks. Great week for me in Week 16. 13-3, including my upset pick, the Texans over the Titans. As I was just waiting to see if I was going to get that one right, and I did. And that clinched me a playoff berth. So I will be competing in the playoffs in the Pick'em tournament. As in my next slide, after the biggest winners and losers, I'll have the people in the tournament who have clinched playoff berths. Congratulations to everybody who has clinched a playoff berth. But, yeah, this is Week 17. 13-3 on the season for me as I get into now my biggest winner and loser for Week 16. Biggest winner for me, I'll give you a hint. My candidates come in the same division. My biggest winner for Week 16 for me, there were a lot of candidates, but I'm going to go with the Jacksonville Jaguars, my biggest winner for Week 16. A dominant win over the Jets. Defense played great, bullied Zach Wilson all night long, and Trevor Lawrence is really evolving into a great quarterback. I like the uprising that the Jags have, and because they won, they are now first place in the AFC South. The Jags, they control their own destiny. All they have to do is win out, and they clinch the AFC South. The Jags are playing very well, and I would look out for them next year. They are looking like a big sleeper team in the AFC. Jacksonville Jaguars, they're my biggest winner for Week 16. Now, the biggest loser, I said these teams play in the same division, and that's why my biggest loser are the Tennessee Titans. You blow it to a team who is 1-12-1, deliberately losing almost, and now you're 7-8 on the season. You've lost 5 in a row, and you don't even control your own fate in the AFC South anymore because you can't win in the division outside if you're playing the Colts. The Titans once again waste a great game for Derrick Henry. They don't have a quarterback situation going on right now. And Tennessee, they honestly don't even look like the best team in that division anymore. They really don't. I really think it's Jacksonville who's the best team in that division right now. The Titans are falling hard. A Titanic choke job, if you will. Tennessee blowing it to the Houston Texans. And that's why the Tennessee Titans are by far my biggest loser for Week 16. And that'll do it. Those are my biggest winners and losers for Week 16. As you can see on the screen right here, we have people who have clinched playoff spots in my Pick'em tournament, if you've been following along. As Joe Hill currently with the best record in the league at 161-79. He has clinched a playoff spot. Myself, I've clinched a playoff spot at 156-84, and Bills Mafia has clinched a playoff spot at 155-85. Then you have Dylan Jr. clinching a playoff berth at 159-80. Josh from Sports Furies clinched a playoff spot at 156-84. And then LC Muscles, you probably know him, 155-85. He has clinched a playoff spot as well. Couple clinching scenarios this week in my tournament, as in the Western Conference, in the Pacific Division, Bills Mafia has a chance to wrap up the division title this week. He needs a winning week or a better week than my buddy Dan from the Steel Twins. And speaking of Dan, he actually has a chance to clinch a playoff berth this week. He needs a winning week and a better week than both Hunter and Leedy. So all three of them things happen, he's going to the playoffs. In my division, the Rocky Mountain Division, the only scenario is with myself, and I can clinch the division this week. I just need a winning week. In the Central Division, Joe Hill, he has a chance to wrap up the Central. He needs a winning week or a better week than Matt Oliver. And then speaking of Matt Oliver, he can wrap up a playoff berth this week. He needs a winning week and a better week than my buddy Joe. Down in the Eastern Conference in the Northeast Division, Dylan Jr. can wrap up the division title. He needs a winning week to do that. In the Metro, Josh from Sports Fury, same scenario, clinches the division title with a winning week. And then Alex Turner in that same division, he can wrap up a playoff berth. He needs a winning week and a better week than Mile High Sports. So both them things happen. He is in the playoffs. And then in the Atlantic, Tiny Tim, he can wrap up a playoff berth. He needs a winning week and a better week than my buddy AJ. So those are your playoff scenarios for Week 17. As let's get on to it. These are my Week 17 picks of the 2022 NFL season. Happy New Year to everybody. And starting things off, we got the final Thursday night game of the season. We got the Dallas Cowboys and the Tennessee Titans. This one is down in Nashville. The Cowboys coming off an improbable win over the Philadelphia Eagles at 11-4. They are headed to the playoffs. The Titans, as I said a few minutes ago, 7-8. They are falling hard. They do not control their own fate anymore in the AFC South. Things to look out for this matchup. The Cowboys' explosive offense against Tennessee's suspect pass defense. We saw earlier in the year when the Titans got manhandled by the Bills on Monday Night Football that the Titans really do have a lot of trouble when it comes to covering high explosive offensive receivers. And really the only thing that I have faith with Tennessee in this game is that they'll get a run game going with Derrick Henry. But even then, the Cowboys will counter with Zeke and Tony Pollard. Titans have lost 5 in a row. They are playing real bad football right now. The Cowboys are still trying to chase Philadelphia for the NFC East title. And I have no doubt in my mind that the Cowboys will just outweigh the Titans here. I'm going to go with the Dallas Cowboys to get the job done over the Titans. And that could possibly eliminate Tennessee from clinching the AFC South. Give me the Cowboys to get the job done over the Titans. No more Saturday games on the season, I believe, as these are all Sunday games coming up. As we got the Arizona Cardinals and the Atlanta Falcons down in Atlanta. This is by far my toilet bowl of the week. It's not even close. Cardinals losing in overtime to the Tampa Bay Bucs. They are 4-11 on the year. Trace McSorley starting at quarterback for them. I'll be fair and say that he did an okay job for the Cardinals, but just nothing spectacular as the Cardinals came up short. Defense picked off Brady a couple of times, but it's just that the offense was just very stale in that game. As for the Falcons, they are coming off a loss to the Baltimore Ravens. They are 5-10 on the season, starting to look like that team that I thought they'd be all season. As I don't know what the deal is with Atlanta's quarterback. I think that they're probably going to roll with Desmond Ridder again for this game. And they're just going to have him play mop-up duty for the rest of the season because Atlanta, in my opinion, they really got nothing else to play for. I don't anticipate them winning the NFC South. I don't think they can even win it right now, to be honest with you. As literally the only way that I think they have any shot at winning it is that they got to win this game and then they got to beat Tampa Bay next week. But yeah, Atlanta, they're pretty much done. I really don't know who to go for this game. Both these teams are just really bad. So when in doubt, I'm going to go home team. That's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to go with the Falcons to win this one. The thing with me is that Atlanta's pass defense is just dreadful. It has been all year, but I really don't think they got to worry about that with the Cardinals in this matchup. Arizona's just done. I'm going to go with the Falcons to get the job done here over the Cardinals. Then we got the Chicago Bears and the Detroit Lions up in Ford Field in Detroit as the Bears are coming off a loss as they are 3-11, 3-12 if I'm not mistaken. No, they're 3-12, yeah. They got destroyed at home by the Buffalo Bills. They're 3-12 on the year as just turnovers just killed the Bears in that game. They had that game under control up until the end of halftime. Then Buffalo just ran away and beat them as the Bears, they're helping us out. So keep on losing, Chicago. we so far would have the 33rd overall pick in the draft. So, yeah, Steeler fans, you got to root for Detroit this week to beat Chicago. Speaking of those Lions, I don't know what the heck happened down in Carolina as they just got spanked by the Panthers. I mean, it was 37-23, but anyone who paid attention to that game knew that game wasn't that close. The Panthers were ahead 31-7 at the beginning of the fourth quarter, I think. That wasn't even a game. I don't know what happened with Detroit. I mean, they're in crunch time now. They can slip in and clinch that number 7 seed in the NFC, and that's the performance they turn in. This is a must-win for the Lions here. The Bears are just playing for pride at this point, but I don't think Chicago has any pride. Their defense is just horrible. Justin Fields can only do so much. And if you play a team like Detroit, you better be able to score points. I think the Bears are capable of doing that, but they're just not going to be able to stop Detroit offensively. Lions have too much ammo on that offense to be cooled down with, and I think that's going to be the difference maker here. The Lions have won 7 out of their last 9, I believe, and they're 7-8 on the season. I'm going to say Detroit gets back to 500 and actually completes the sweep of the Chicago Bears. Give me the Detroit Lions to keep their playoff hopes alive, possibly even get back into the 7th seed, and I'm going to go with the Lions to get the job done over Chicago. Then we got a really easy one here. Really needs no explanation needed. Denver Broncos and the Kansas City Chiefs out in Arrowhead. Denver got a 50-burger dropped on them on Christmas Day, 51-14 to the LA Rams as Russell Wilson. Let's just say he's not exactly a gourmet chef. The guy got roasted by Patrick Starr on Nickelodeon. Seriously, you see the highlight of that? Patrick was like, "That's not what he wanted to cook," when he threw his second pick of the game. But, yeah, the Broncos, a miserable year for them. They're 4-11. And they can't even be hopeful for the draft because they trade away all them draft picks for Russell Wilson. Kansas City, just the opposite. 12-3 on the year for them. And they are chasing the Buffalo Bills for the number 1 seed in the AFC. Kansas City's won 14 in a row. Make it 15 in a row. And I am locking up the Chiefs easily this week. This is by far my lock of the week. I'm going with the Kansas City Chiefs to get the job done over the Broncos here. Next up, we got the Miami Dolphins heading on up to New England to play the Patriots, as the Dolphins, once upon a time, were 8-3, and Tua Tagovailoa was playing at an MVP level, and the Dolphins looked like they would be a strong candidate to compete in the playoffs. Miami's lost 4 in a row, and they're 8-7 on the year. Still in it for the playoff hunt, but they are treading in very thin water right now, as Tua Tagovailoa had a miserable game on Christmas. He threw 3 interceptions against the Packers, and Tua is actually now in concussion protocol. That is a very big difference maker for this one. For the second time this season, Tua is in concussion protocol, and honestly, like I said, beginning of the year, or earlier in the year rather, if I was Tua, I would probably hang it up early, because that fall that he had against the Bills, that has to be a neurological problem that he has right there. It's just a shame. You know, he got shaken up against the Packers, and he has another concussion. It affected his game against the Patriots, and Miami's playoff hopes, I mean, they are not looking too good right now. They legit have a chance to lose out. Look, like last year's Ravens. Exact same record too, 8-3 to go to 8-9, you know? So the Dolphins, just a real bad fall from grace for them. As for the Patriots, they're 7-8. They're not exactly great either. They were down 22-0 at one point to the Bengals. They made it 22-18. A costly fumble by Stevenson, and the Patriots' hopes for a comeback were halted, and they were null and void. The Patriots, even though I don't anticipate them to make the playoffs, they still have a small chance at it. But in order for that to happen, they have to come away with this victory somehow, some way. Mac Jones, I just don't think he's the guy for them, and New England's going to have to do it with running the ball, maintaining possession, chewing time off the clock, and taking advantage of the fact that Tua is most likely not going to play in this game. Patriots have never beaten Tua, so I think that has to be a sigh of relief for them right there. I think Teddy Bridgewater is still their backup down in Miami, not entirely sure, but whatever the case is, I am going to go with the Patriots to get the job done here over the Dolphins. I know Miami's favored in this game, but without Tua, I really don't think that they're the better team. I'm going to go with the Patriots to get the job done over the Dolphins here. Then we got the Indianapolis Colts and the New York Giants. This one is out in MetLife, as the Colts got blown out at home on Monday Night Football 20-3 by the Chargers. Hey, at least they didn't blow a 33-0 lead to them. As the Giants, they are 8-6-1, a really bad loss to the Vikings. I mean, they gave that game to Minnesota. So many turnovers, so many misuses on offense, and just so many points left off the board for the Giants, and that doomed them. They're still in good shape to clinch the playoffs, and I really don't know if they have a scenario. Like I say every week, the scenarios will be posted on the top of the board. But yeah, the Giants have a really good chance at clinching the playoffs, and I think they're going to be fighting for their lives here. I think Saquon Barkley needs to be the bulk of their offense. Daniel Jones, I don't know if he is really proven to be a winner. I mean, he's improved, but when your team is down and you need a comeback in the fourth quarter, are you really going to trust putting the ball in the arms of Daniel Jones? I really don't know, but against a soft Indianapolis team who's a bottom 10 team this year, I really don't see any issue for the Giants. I mean, sure, the Colts may give them a few scares here and there, but overall, I just think the Giants are the better team, and I think they just have more to play for. You know, they want that playoff spot. They want to go to the playoffs. This is a young group that has potential on the rise, and I think with these upcoming drafts, they got to nail them fair and square. So I'm going to go with the New York Giants to get the job done over the Colts here and increase their chances of making the playoffs. So give me Big Blue to get it done over the Colts. Another reason why right here, we got the New Orleans Saints and the Philadelphia Eagles. This one is out in Philly, as the Saints are coming off a win over the Browns 17-10, a game in which the Saints really didn't play great at all. Cleveland just blew that game and gave the Saints so many chances to win, and that's exactly what the Saints did. Losing teams find ways to lose games, and the Browns are a losing team, and that's why they're eliminated from playoff contention. As the Saints got it done with defense and taking advantage of misuses, but that was a pretty lucky win by the Saints right there. Meanwhile, the Philadelphia Eagles are 13-2, a loss in Dallas to the Cowboys, despite Gardner Minshew doing the best that he could. Gardner Minshew is a really good backup quarterback. I really think that he should be the starter on another team. He should really be given that opportunity to prove that he can be the guy for another team. But, you know, with what he is in Philly, I wouldn't complain too much about it. I don't know the status of Jalen Hurts for this game. But regardless, I think the Eagles will be just fine as far as the quarterback situation goes, whether it's Jalen Hurts or Gardner Minshew. I really think Philly's going to be okay at quarterbacks here. Miles Sanders, just enough said about him. That guy is more than capable of having a good game. And of course, they got A.J. Brown and Devontae there. You know, just a really solid Philly team right there. Their pass defense, I don't think it has to be much of a worry for this game, because the Saints, outside of Chris Olave, don't have much firepower as far as the passing game goes. The only thing that really concerns me for Philly in this matchup is the rush defense. It's been very hit and miss all season, along with another team in Pennsylvania. But, yeah, the Eagles, I really don't see them having much of an issue here, and I'm going to take them to go to 14-2 on the year. And if I'm not mistaken, this would be a franchise record for most wins in a season in Eagles history. So I'm going to go with the Eagles to get the job done over the Saints, and I believe this would wrap up the NFC East for them and the number one overall seed in the NFC. So I am going to go with the Philadelphia Eagles to get the job done over the Saints. Tricky one here. Carolina Panthers and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This one is down in Tampa as the Panthers, coming off a dominant win, really, over the Detroit Lions, 37-23. Like I said, I know it was 37-23, but if you paid attention to that game at all, it was not that close. Panthers were up 31-7 at one point. D'Onta Foreman, I'm telling you, that guy has a very bright future. I really do think that he has potential to be a top 10 running back in the very near future. That guy has really stepped up in the range because when the Panthers got rid of CMC, everyone's like, oh, they're tanking. This team may not win another game for the rest of the year. Foreman comes up and takes the reins, and all he's done was become almost a league leader in rushing yards. This guy has such a good future for him. And the best thing about him is that he can stay healthy. Panthers quarterback situation, I think they got to roll with Sam Darnold in this one because Sam Darnold has been the quarterback that has won them the most games this year. They've been awful with Baker Mayfield this year, and he's not on the team anymore. And P.J. Walker's been there from time to time, which is why I think really the Panthers, if they can find a quarterback, not even a franchise quarterback, but just a half-decent quarterback that can be a starter for them and win them games, they can be a pretty good team. They really could. They got a nice defense. The defense is just a work in progress, and of course you got that run game. Carolina has some pieces to be competitive. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are just a mess. I know they're 7-8. I know they got the job done over the Cardinals, but come on. It's another victory against another garbage team. Like, seriously, who is the best team that Tampa Bay has beaten this year? I really can't remember if they really beat a good team. I think they beat the Cowboys, but that was week 1. You know, the Cowboys are just a better team than Tampa Bay is. Other than that, I can't really think of any other solid team that the Bucs have beaten this year. I really can't. You know? I mean, they beat the Seahawks, I think, when the Seahawks were good, but Seattle, they just really overachieved. I'm talking about a legit playoff contender, a legit team that is going to be playing January meaningful football. That's what I'm talking about with Tampa Bay. They just haven't done it this year. Tom Brady should have thrown like 4 picks against the Cardinals. He really should have. He threw 2 awful ones against them, and the Cardinals honestly should have had 2 more. Tampa Bay got very lucky in that game. And I think going up against Carolina's young defense like that, when they played them earlier in the year and Carolina dominated them from head to toe, and now with the Bucs defense starting to fall off a little bit, especially on the ground, I think Tampa Bay is in trouble here. I know the Bucs can actually wrap up the division this week with a win. All they got to do is beat Carolina. But if I was the Bucs, that would be a very tall order, in my opinion, because Carolina, they will give them a really hard time. They just look like a better team without Matt Rule. So, Tampa Bay is favored in this game, but honestly, if you ask me who the better team is between these two, I think it's the Carolina Panthers, and I think they actually go down to Tampa Bay and beat the Bucs. I can't really call this an upset, because, like I said, I just think Carolina's the better team despite being underdogs. I really do. I really think they're better than Tampa Bay at this point in time. And this would be a massive victory for the Panthers if they win this game, because all they would have to do is win in Week 18, and believe it or not, the Panthers would clinch the NFC South, because they would own the tiebreaker over Tampa Bay because they would have swept them. So I think that will be the case in this one. Give me the Carolina Panthers to go down to Tampa Bay and stun the Buccaneers and ruin their chances at clinching the NFC South. Give me the Panthers. Then we got the Cleveland Browns going down to our nation's capital to face the Commanders, as the Browns are coming off a home loss to the Saints, 17-10, their last home game of the season, as they blew a 10-0 lead against the Saints. Despite a strong outing from Nick Chubb, once again, they wasted it because of misuses and sloppy defense, and Kevin Stefanski is a moron who needs to be fired. And the Cleveland Browns are 6-9, mathematically eliminated from playoff contention. So there is 204. So let's see. That's $92 million right there for Deshaun Watson, or however much they're paying him over 5 years. There's $92 million down the drain right there, or $46 million down the drain right there. Whatever 246 divided by 5 is. But anyway, there's a bad loss for the Browns right there. The Commanders, a bad loss in San Francisco themselves, so they ain't off the hook exactly. A bad loss in San Francisco, 37-20. They gave the 49ers a little bit of a scare, but the 49ers just pulled away at the end. And honestly, 2 bad losses in a row for Washington, and we should start to be concerned about their playoff hopes. It's starting to look like the collapse that they had to end last season. So Washington, they are in must-win mode now. Their room for error is very slim. And going up against a Cleveland team that has nothing else to play for at this point, they can't even play for the draft because they got rid of their next 3 first-round picks until 2023. I'm sorry. I'm going to go with the Commanders. This kind of gives me Week 17 to 2019 vibes. I think the Browns are just playing to get Kevin Stefanski fired, like they did with Freddie Kitchens. So I'm gonna give this one to the Commanders to keep their playoff hopes alive. Give me Washington to beat Cleveland. Then we got the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Houston Texans. This one is down in Houston. The Jags are 7-8 and they lead the AFC South. As I said, I truly think they're the best team in the division at this point. Trevor Lawrence is developing into a really good quarterback. They got some okay receivers. I think that's something that the Jags need to hit up on in the draft. And their defense, if you're not careful, their defense will limit you and they'll punish you. I think Doug Peterson has done a phenomenal job down there in Jacksonville, and I think at this point, I keep flip-flopping with this. I've been saying, Brian Daboll should win Coach of the Year for the Giants. I think Robert Saleh should win Coach of the Year. Dan Campbell should be in contention. Kyle Shanahan should be in contention for it. I think a lot of people are sleeping on Doug Peterson. Those are all great candidates, but I think people are forgetting about Doug Peterson. This is a guy who came in and took, a 2-3 win team from last year, had no business being competitive at all this year, and he fixed up Trevor Lawrence this year, and he has a chance to clinch Jacksonville a playoff berth. There's a reason that Doug Peterson was a winning coach over in Philly. And I think that has translated over to Jacksonville. Doug Peterson, he has done a phenomenal job, and he needs to be in the talks of Coach of the Year as well. It's a pretty juicy choice of who's going to win Coach of the Year this year, and I think Doug Peterson should be right there. Houston is 2-12-1 on the season. I think their tank can afford another win, which they got this past Sunday over the Tennessee Titans, as I really don't see Houston winning another game this year. But I will say this about the Texans. They usually give the Jags a lot of problems. I can't remember the last time that the Jags actually beat the Texans. Had to have been back like in 2018 or 2019. But yeah, the Jags, they just always have trouble beating Houston. Before that Titans game, actually, the Jags were the only team that the Texans had beaten. I think that changes. I'm going to go with the Jacksonville Jaguars to snap their losing streak against the Texans. And I got Jacksonville going to 500 here and taking advantage of the fact that Tennessee could be 7-9 by the end of Week 17, and they control their own destiny in the AFC South. I'm going to go with the Jags to get the job done over the Texans. Later slate of games Sunday, we got the San Francisco 49ers at the Las Vegas Raiders. This one is out in Vegas. As the 49ers are 11-4, they keep on rolling. They've won 8 in a row, NFC West champions, and they celebrated the occasion by beating the Washington Commanders 37-20. Brock Purdy once again played okay. CMC did his thing, and the defense once again did their thing. George Kittle is just an absolute monster. There is absolutely no stopping that guy. And I'm telling you, this 49er team, they are going to be a tough team to beat in the playoffs. I say it every week with them. They are going to be the team that nobody wants to play in the NFC playoffs. There's a reason I said San Francisco is going to go back to the playoffs at the beginning of the season. I just didn't anticipate them to win the West. I thought the Rams would, but that was before the Rams lost Whitworth and pretty much their whole offensive line and their whole team got injured. But I never counted out the 49ers as well. This is a really good team, and this is a really tough team. They'll run the ball right down your throat, and they'll beat you up on defense. Vegas is just notorious for choking, and they choked once again to us on Christmas Eve. Up 10-3, Vegas chokes it, and they lose to us 13-10 on Franco Harris night. I don't think the Raiders have anything else to play for in this game. Their season's pretty much over with, and going up against a really tough 49er team, I think that's all the motivation the Niners need. They are chasing Minnesota for the second seed in the NFC, and while I don't think it's going to happen, the 49ers, I think there is a very small possibility that they could actually get the number 1 seed. They need to win out, and they need Philly to lose out. I don't think that'll happen, but it's still a very slim possibility. But regardless, I'm going to go with the 49ers to get the job done over the Raiders, and this is my point spread of the week. San Francisco wins this one 31-13. They cover it all day. Give me the 49ers to beat the Raiders. Then we got another really hard one for me to decide. We got the New York Jets at the Seattle Seahawks. This one is in Seattle. The Jets are 7-8. Their playoff hopes are very thin as well, as they do own the tiebreaker over the Dolphins. So the Jets, I think they need to play their hardest this week as well, because they play the Dolphins in Week 18. And they beat the Dolphins earlier in the year. So the Jets, if they win this game, that would set up a pivotal matchup with Miami in Week 18. But the biggest news for the Jets is that Mike White is cleared to play. And if I was Robert Saleh, I would give him the green light immediately, because Mike White, in my opinion, gives the Jets the best chance at winning. If their run game was fully healthy, the Jets, I think, absolutely would have a way better chance at winning, because their mentality is beat you up on defense and run the ball down your throat all year. That's why they've won as many games as they did. So the Jets, they're not necessarily completely out of it, but they do have a very slim chance of going to the playoffs. Seattle Seahawks 7-8. In my opinion, they've been the biggest overachievers this season. Geno Smith was playing like an MVP at the beginning of the year. The Seahawks have fallen off, and all of a sudden they just can't get anything going for them. They just look dead. You know, Pete Carroll, I mean, he's done a good job this year given for what the Seahawks had, but in my opinion, this is nothing to be ashamed of for the Seahawks, because they still fleeced Denver, and they got first-round draft capital to work with. So the Seahawks, I think really all they need to do is fix up the O-line, get some receivers, and draft a defense, and Seattle can be a very competitive team again. So this one was very tricky to decide, because, you know, Geno Smith is going up against his old team in the Jets. Tricky one for me to decide, but there's an X factor here, and it's the Jets defense. Jets defense, I think, is better than Seattle's offense. I think the Seahawks are going to run into a buzzsaw that is the Jets defense, and I really don't know if the Seahawks are built for situations like this. Not that I think the Jets are, but I just think that the Jets are a little bit more manageable than Seattle is. So this is a game that can go either way, in my opinion, but I am rolling with the New York Jets to go to Seattle and beat the Seahawks. And the Jets have been a solid road team this year. Seattle has struggled at home over the past couple years. I think that's a difference maker too. I'm going with the New York Jets to go to Seattle and beat the Seahawks, set up a pivotal Week 18 matchup against the Miami Dolphins. I'm going with the Jets. Another pivotal one here. We got the Minnesota Vikings and the Green Bay Packers up in Lambeau. If you remember back in Week 1, the Vikings beat Green Bay. They dominated them, and the Vikings have wrapped up the NFC North since then. They are 12-3 on the year. Got the job done over the Giants. A game-winning 61-yarder for Greg Joseph. unbelievable kick right there. But before that, the Vikings took advantage of pretty much every misuse that the Giants had. And Minnesota, once again, with a one-score possession win, or a one-possession score win, rather. And they're 12-3, chasing Philly for that number 1 seed in the NFC. Philly, though, can wrap it up this week. But still, the Vikings, they are going to be playing their hardest this week. They have a chance to sweep their most hated rival in the Green Bay Packers. Just as a side note, this is a rivalry I've always enjoyed. I honestly think the Vikings and Packers, I honestly think it one-ups Bears-Packers. I really do. Because the Bears and Packers, usually it's one team is good and one team is bad. They're almost never good at the same time. The Vikings and Packers, though, both teams are usually pretty good when they play each other. And it just seems like it has a little bit more animosity. And the Vikings are the only team in the NFC North that has really been able to give Green Bay a hard time. So honestly, if you ask me, I think Vikings-Packers one-ups Bears-Packers. I've always gotten a kick out of watching this rivalry, the Vikings and Packers. I think it's a very underrated rivalry in the NFL. But yeah, Green Bay, about a month ago, they were sitting at 4-8. Everyone was writing them off, myself included. And all they've done was win 3 in a row. And they're 7-8. Green Bay is 15-0 in the month of December under Matt LaFleur. So that's something Green Bay's good for. They just don't lose in December with Matt LaFleur. And I don't think Green Bay will make the playoffs because they lost too many games and their room for error is very small. But in my eyes, two things make me decide this game. Number one, it's Aaron Rodgers at Lambeau in basically prime time. He is very tough to beat in those situations. And number two, it's a later time slot for Kirk Cousins. He never really strives in situations like that. So as much as I want to pick Minnesota to win this one, I think the Vikings missed their chance at clinching the number 1 seed in the NFC, and I think Green Bay avoids the sweep here. I'm going with the Packers to keep their slim playoff hopes alive for another week, because at the end of the day, I just think Green Bay's in desperation mode, and they're going to play harder than Minnesota will. Not that the Vikings won't play hard, because, let's face it, the Vikings, they have the North wrapped up. They really don't need to play for anything else. Green Bay, they are playing with their lives on the line here. I'm going to go with the Packers to get the job done over the Vikings in a very close game. Battle of LA, the original Sunday Night Football game this week. The Los Angeles Rams and the Los Angeles Chargers at SoFi Stadium, the Battle of LA. As the Rams dropped a 50-burger on the Broncos on a Sunday, 51-14. Baker Mayfield played a really solid game for the Rams, and the defense was just phenomenal in that game. Not that Russell Wilson has played great all year. He's been terrible all year for the Broncos, but LA just a dominant win over Denver. They're 5-10 on the season, if I'm not mistaken. Still not going to make the playoffs. They're still eliminated from contention, but still, I mean, anytime you can make a fool out of Russell Wilson, that is whatever, man. I mean, the Rams, they just did what they needed to do for at least 1 week. I mean, that's just a glimpse of what the Rams are when they're at full strength. The other LA team in the Chargers dominated the Colts on Monday night 20-3. Justin Herbert played great. Austin Eckler is an absolute stud. And if the Chargers get all the right fundamentals correctly, this could be a tough team to beat in the playoffs as well, as the Chargers wrapped up a playoff spot. First time in Justin Herbert's career that he'll be going to the playoffs. First time in 4 years that the Chargers have made the playoffs. So yeah, LA is going to the playoffs. They will be playing meaningful January football as they take on their in-city rival in the Los Angeles Rams. So my question for this matchup is, who's going to show up more between the fan bases? Because these two fan bases don't give a crap about their respective teams. I'll tell you that right now. So, I don't know. I guess because the Chargers are technically the home team for this matchup, it's just going to be awkward, you know? Kind of like when the Giants and Jets play each other, you know? It's going to kind of be awkward to see, like, they go, whose house? Rams' house. Or, you know, they're going to be like all the Chargers animations or whatever. Like when the Jets and Giants play, it's like, oh, it's MetLife. It's a home game for the Giants. No, it's a home game for the Jets. You know, it's just awkward, you know, but yeah, man, I think this one really needs no explanation. I'm going to go with the Chargers to win this one because LA has clinched their playoff spot. The Rams, their season is over. They got nothing else to play for at this point. And the Chargers, I just think, are just the better team overall. They have too much firepower on their offense for for the Rams to handle. And the Rams, they just look out of it, and they played like it. I mean, I know they dropped 50 on Denver, but that was their highlight of the season. I'm going to go with the Chargers to get the job done over the Rams. Well. This game got flexed to Sunday Night Football. The Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens will be playing each other on Sunday Night Football. The Steelers are 7-8. Coming off an emotional win over the Vegas Raiders, 13-10, game-winning drive by Kenny Pickett, as they won it for Franco Harris on Franco Harris night, retiring his number and celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Immaculate Reception. We're 7-8, and believe it or not, we still have a very, 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 very small chance at making the playoffs. Do I anticipate us making the playoffs? No. But we still have that microscopic chance of making the playoffs. We may be able to finish over 500, and Mike Tomlin won't have a losing record this year, but I just don't anticipate this team making the playoffs, plain and simple. Defense for us, as I'll get more into this into my preview. There isn't going to be a hype this week, by the way, because let's just face it. I mean, this team is just not going to make the playoffs, plain and simple. But you take a look at what we did defensively. 3 interceptions on Derek Carr. Defense played great. Josh Jacobs only had 45 rushing yards on the night. And that was the guy on Vegas that I was most concerned about, was Josh Jacobs, because going into that game, he led the league in rushing yards. 45 rushing yards for Josh Jacobs. That just goes to show you, when this defense, specifically the rush defense, plays at their absolute best, they can limit anyone on the ground. I just wish that Tomlin, Flores, and Austin would be more consistent with it, incorporate the blitzes, incorporate the 3-4, you know? Pass defense still needs a lot of work, obviously, but going up against Baltimore, a rush-heavy team, I think that's going to be their game plan, to just jam it down our throats and have Lamar Jackson throw, because I think Lamar might be good to go for this game. If not, Tyler Huntley's the starter. But I'll be honest with you, as a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, I would be more confident going up against Lamar for this game, because Lamar notoriously plays bad against the Steelers. He's had the worst games of his career against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I would honestly be more comfortable going up against Lamar for this matchup. The Ravens are 10-5. They've clinched a playoff berth. They're chasing the Bengals for the AFC North title. Ravens defensively, again, they're very suspect, but I really don't think with them, with their pass defense, they're going to have much to worry about. But I will say this, they better keep their eyes open, because if you're not careful and you downplay Kenny Pickett, he'll get you. Like I said, Kenny Pickett, he's starting to develop that winning pedigree. And that's something that in Pittsburgh, if you have it as a quarterback, you will be praised no matter what. And Kenny Pickett, he is a winner. He's a rookie, and we're already calling him a winner, because he has 3 comebacks to his name this year, and he's just a rookie. 3 come from behind wins for Kenny Pickett this year. So he's done a really good job at being clutch. He has developed those clutch genes, and I really love the way that Kenny Pickett's playing. Meanwhile, the Ravens, Lamar Jackson, as I said, possibly the best dual threat quarterback in the game. Does he have the best arm? No. But the way Lamar will beat you is with their legs. And honestly, this is an underrated matchup between two quarterbacks that not only both wear the number 8, but they can both find ways to win with their legs, just in a different way. Lamar, obviously, he's a fantastic runner. Kenny Pickett, he's not a runner, but when it's like, oops, I gotta go, Kenny Pickett can run for a scramble. He can pick up yards on his legs. He can QB sneak. So it's a very interesting matchup of two quarterbacks that can both use their legs to make plays. So that's my takeaway for this. So, who do I go for this matchup? Well, the Ravens are 10-5. They're better than us this year. Honestly, they've been better than us every year since 2018, if you want my honest opinion. I know that we were better than them. I know we finished above them in 2020 and 2021, but if you want my honest opinion about who the better team was those 2 years, it was Baltimore. They really were. But now we got to go up against J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards, who both had solid games for the Ravens. However, I will say this. Like I said, the Ravens, they tend to overlook some of these weaker teams that they've played. So, the Steelers, they're playing for pride at this point. They want to make it interesting in the AFC. Not so much clinch the playoffs, but just make it interesting. I need an upset this week. And I'm taking my guys to pull off the upset. That's right. I'm taking us to go to Baltimore and beat the Ravens. This is my upset of the week here. After all, we have beaten the Ravens in Baltimore 4 out of the last 5 times. The one time we lost to the Ravens was back in the final week of 2019, where the Ravens' backups ran hog wild over us. Like I said, though, we seem to play Lamar Jackson better when he's starting for the Ravens. And I think with the Steelers in desperation mode right here, this kind of reminds me of when we played the Bengals deep into the season in 2013. We were in desperation mode that year, and we beat the Bengals in primetime. Now we're playing the Ravens in primetime, and we're in desperation. The Ravens already have a playoff spot locked up. All they're doing is just chasing the AFC North title. I think this game is going to give me that game kind of vibes. I'm going to go with my guys to pull off the upset. Give me the Steelers to get the job done over the Ravens, and I'll even say a bold thing here. I think Kenny Pickett gets his 4th game-winning drive of the season. I think the Ravens are not going to blow a double-digit lead. I think it'll be maybe, let's say, 14-13 or something in the 4th quarter, and Kenny Pickett leads a game-winning drive to win it for the Steelers. I'm going to go with the Pittsburgh Steelers to get to 8-8. And week 9 and week 18 will determine if we have another winning season. But I'm going to go with the Steelers to get the job done over the Ravens. Wrapping up week 17, we got a great matchup in Cincinnati. We got the Buffalo Bills and the Cincinnati Bengals. This one is down in Cincinnati. This one took me a very long time to think about. So the Bills are 12-3. They're currently the number 1 seed in the AFC. The Bills, they have beaten some really quality teams this year. They beat the Chiefs at Arrowhead. When the Titans were, they demolished Tennessee on Monday night. Not that the Titans are a quality team, but still, they demolished them. And they have, let's see, who else did they beat? I think they've beaten... honestly, though, now that I think about it, the only team that the only real contender that Buffalo's beaten is Kansas City. They lost to Minnesota. They beat the Packers, but, really the Bills, they're 12-3. They're kind of cooling down a little bit as far as defense goes, but the Bills just seem like a second half kind of team to me. Not taking anything away from Buffalo. They're a phenomenal team. But I just don't really see how they rely so much on building a second half to carry them the rest of the way, because that's what happened in Chicago. They were down to the Bears much of that game. Second half comes, Bills are just a better team. I think in order for the Bills to be successful, they got to keep feeding it to Diggs. And I think they got to utilize Singletary more often. Tire out that Bengals offense. Because what happened? They got Singletary involved against Chicago, and Singletary went off on him. So I think that's a big key factor right there for the Buffalo Bills, is to get Singletary and Diggs involved and be the bulk there. Because Josh Allen, he is very turnover prone. I will not deny that. He is very turnover prone. I like the guy. He's probably my favorite quarterback in the league right now, but he is very turnover prone. Meanwhile, the Cincinnati Bengals, they're the team that have beaten some quality teams this year. They beat the Kansas City Chiefs again in Cincinnati, I believe. They beat the Chiefs. They have beaten, let's see who else. They've beaten Tennessee again. Not that the Titans are a great team, but they beat the Titans when they were 7-3, I think. Over in the NFC side of things, well, of course they would sweep the NFC South. But still, the Bengals, they have beaten some really good teams this year. And the Bengals, honestly, the biggest thing with this matchup, the Bengals, if they win this game, they own the tiebreaker over both Kansas City and Buffalo. So if the Bengals win this game, they go from the 3rd seed in the AFC to the 1st seed. So, yeah, a lot's on the line for the Bengals here. They win this game, they are the 1st seed in the AFC. And I believe they clinched the North with a win and a Baltimore loss. So, yeah, Bengals fans, once again, you got to root for us. I just like saying that, but I just like stirring the pot a little bit. But yeah, the Bengals, they are looking like a very dangerous team. And I think they're the team in the AFC that nobody wants to play. An underrated Super Bowl prediction, a rematch of 16-23. Bengals 49ers Part 3. Kind of like the Steelers and Cowboys playing in the Super Bowl 3 times. So, my keys to this one. Obviously, the Bengals, they got to play 60 minutes of football because, like I said, the Bills have a knack for building second half comebacks this year. Bengals got to play smart defense. Buffalo has a ton of firepower on that offense. And then as for the Bills, you got to tire out the Bengals defense because Cincinnati, if you're not careful defensively, they'll get you. Bills need to have good blocking too. Bengals are capable of bringing up sacks. And you got to be smart with the ball. Like I said, Josh Allen is very turnover prone. This matchup here has a ton of potential to be game of the week. I think it will. Who do I pick for this one? Well, I like the role. Me being a Steeler fan, I don't like the role the Bengals are on. But as an NFL fan, I will say the Bengals are on quite a roll right now. They've won 7 in a row. Buffalo's just been hot all season. And while the Bengals have beaten some really good teams this year, I think Buffalo is just due for a win against a solid team. It was hard for me to decide, but I think the Bills have more advantages in this game than the Bengals do, despite it being a primetime game in Cincinnati. So I was really close to picking the Bengals for this one, but I'm going to go with the Buffalo Bills. I think the Bills are just due for a win against a quality team. I think that their offense is a little too much for Cincinnati to handle. I think the Bengals are being caught off guard with Singletary, and I think that Cincinnati's suspect offensive line will kind of underestimate the Bills' pass rush. I'm going to go with the Bills. I might change this pick, though, so this is not a final pick for me. But for right now, I am going with the Buffalo Bills to get the job done over the Bengals because the Bills, they want that 1st seed in the AFC, and so do the Bengals. The winner of this game, in my opinion, clinches the number 1 seed. So I'm going to go with the Buffalo Bills to get the job done over the Bengals. That'll do it. Those are my Week 17 picks of the 2022 NFL season. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. This is Steel Sermon checking on out for the night. May God be with you all.